Unfortunately, what I was calling for has happened. It's here now. This is 25 years later, and everything I predicted is coming true. So it's sad, I'm worried, I'm very concerned about humanity and the world right now. The purpose of the financial system was to steal your wealth. In 2021, China collapsed, and that's why COVID appeared again. Notice that?
Robert, I want to jump into it. You've said that this will be the biggest crash in world history. Maybe explain why. What is actually happening right now that we might not see reported in the papers every day? What's actually going on?
Well, first of all, let's step back, okay? Years and years ago, I was benefit of studying with a man named R. Buckminster Fuller. He's considered a futurist, and he built the geodesic dome in 1967. I hitchhiked. I was at school in New York, went from Hawaii to New York, and I hitchhiked to Montreal, Canada, to Expo 67, the World's Fair on the Future, because I like looking into the future. And Bucky Fuller's dome was there. It was the U.S. Pavilion at Expo 67. And I went through there. I said, man, that guy thinks differently, Buckminster Fuller. So just check him out. And when I was a kid, my poor dad used to have me building the structures of universe. He called them like squares, tetrahedrons, icosahedrons, dodecahedrons. I'm like 10 years ago. What the hell am I studying this stuff for, But it affected my brain because I was working with my hands. So in 1967, I'm in school, the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, one of the 5 federal schools in America, military school. And I hitchhiked from New York to Montreal, and I went through the geodesic dome. It blew me away. I went, holy. So that's how it all got started. And so for 3 years, 81, 82, and 83, I studied with Fuller during the summer to how to see the future. So I said the biggest stock market crash is still coming. And this was after the 2008 crash. And the reason I could predict that the 2008 crash was just a prelude for the bigger crash coming, which we are in today in 2022. I mean, even China's crashing today. Because they never fixed the problem. In fact, the whole problem is that the global economic system is rigged. It's called the central bank system. The Bank of Japan, the Bank of England, Bank of Japan, stuff like this. This whole system is rigged. If we don't borrow money, money doesn't exist. So money comes into existence because every time you use your credit card, take out a mortgage, buy a car, that's when money is created. And that goes back to 1913. Again, the Federal Reserve Bank was created, central banks, which is Marxist. And then in 1913, in America, the Internal Revenue Service was created, the IRS, because money cannot exist without debt and taxes. So I'm sitting there going, holy moly. And as you know, in 2021, China collapsed. And that's why COVID appeared again. Notice that? So Evergrande, which is the biggest, I think it's bigger than Lehman Brothers crash. And Evergrande's going down. Now, when real estate goes down, it's a financial crash more than anything else. They have 90 million condos in China not occupied. So what that does is it's this big sucking sound, like it's going down the toilet right now. When real estate goes down, it takes all the economies of the world with it. Like, Australia, one of my favorite countries, ships a lot of supplies to China. And there, Australia was booming because China was booming with real estate. And so in 2021, when it collapsed, that means Australia collapses more. But that's why I think Australia locked the country down also. Everybody to stay indoors and all this. I personally think they're afraid of civil unrest. And so I think that's why, COVID appeared in September 17, 2019, our repo market collapsed. And the repo market is the shadow banking system, as they call it. You don't see that market, but I'm watching the shadow banking system. And when the repo market collapsed in September 17, 2019, voila, COVID appeared. The money supply is so huge today because they're trying to prevent the balloon from collapsing. They're desperate. Jim Rickards, he's one of the smartest guys I know. He says, prepare, we're going to collapse. 98% don't understand this. The dollar is a reserve currency of the world, which came about in 1944 with the Bretton Woods Agreement. We can just keep printing, but the rest of the world is collapsing right now. And everybody depends upon the US printing. But that's why I watched China. And when Evergrande came down in 2021, the biggest real estate collapse in history, bigger than 2008. And all of a sudden, they locked people down with COVID. I'm going, I've seen this story before because it happened in 2019. They're desperate, Brian. They're desperate. They're looking for anything that can stop this thing. The richest families in the world control the central banks. And you said you pull the curtain aside. It's like the story of the Wizard of Oz. You pull the curtain aside. There's a little guy back there called the Fed chairman trying to keep the economy from collapsing on. But they're going to keep printing until the thing is destroyed. Why don't we teach money at school? It's not a mistake. Because what Marx predicted has come true. It's 1848. Okay? He said communism would take over America specifically, or the capitalist world, in 2 stages. So stage 1 happened in 1930. In 1930, the Frankfurt School out of Berlin sent teachers to Columbia University Teachers College. That was in 1930. So communism invaded America through our teacher system. So capitalism is a religion, and Marxism is a religion. So is fascism. Economics is basically a religion. And the question is, which religion do you want to follow? Tax the rich or don't pay taxes? Put your money in an IRA or don't put any money in the stock market. So it's all those things. So when you can get it from that perspective, you have more options to choose which one you like. But the biggest problem today, again, is we have no financial education in our schools. A lot of the really smart guys on Wall Street, too, they don't understand what I'm saying. Do you know what I mean? They're inside the machine. They're inside the whole grinder out there. The 4 people in capital or money all throughout the world. You have employees, small business, self-employed. You have big business, 500 employees or more. And you have I. It stands for insider. It doesn't stand for investor. So I always invest from the inside. And people say, well, isn't insider trading illegal? Yeah, for these guys. It's legal for these guys. The other thing is taxes, like Ocasio-Cortez, he's a communist from New York. He says, tax the rich. Well, the only people that pay taxes are employees. They pay 40%. This is global. And then S, the small business, the small entrepreneur, somebody says, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. They pay 60%. So the small entrepreneur is crushed all from the start. But big business is 500 employees or more, defined by the Internal Revenue Service, the tax department, is 20%, and insiders pay 0.